Actually, I think this is really important. I want to mention it. I know it's easy for us to be sitting here on stage kind of like saying, passing down laws from the top of the mountain. This is how WoW is going to change. But these are the kind of things we've been hearing from players really since the talent tree's launched, and certainly from Cataclysm. So this isn't just something we decided, hey, let's tinker with talent, that'll be fun. This is something overall we've heard from players for a long time. Guys, you can do better, and we're about to do better. You're welcome. So, talent's gone. Okay. Not completely, but it is so different that we're calling it Talents 2.0. Now, the best way to think about this is you have three types of abilities. You have your class abilities. Say you're a warrior, you get certain abilities for picking warrior. You have your spec abilities. Today, you only really get one spec ability. We're talking about giving you several. And then finally, you have the actual talents, which should be very optional in that you get to choose which one makes the most sense for you. So you still choose your spec level 2, and you get a spec ability right away, and then you get other spec abilities later as it makes sense. So you might get one level 25, level 40, level 70. Anything from your tree that we thought you really need to function, whether it's a core ability like Divine Storm or a fun proc like Art of War, we just give you those now rather than risk you skipping over them. Like I said, some of these are old talents you need to have, and old core abilities not every spec needs. You'll see this particularly for the pure DPS classes, where a Warlock doesn't need so many different dots and nukes when ultimately Destruction and Affliction are supposed to have different rotations. So what we did is just take some things like Immolate and say, okay, that's now a Destruction-only spell. So just as an example, these are the kind of things a Protection Paladin will get. Point of note that Hammer of the Righteous here goes for both Protection and Retribution. There are going to be some abilities that make sense to go into more than one spec. And you can see there are passives and procs in here too. And then you also get to pick talents. There are no longer any talent points or ranks, and there's one talent tree per class. We thought this was really important in order to deliver on the hybridization, or saying, I want to be a little bit of this and a little bit of that. You earn a talent every 15 levels, which sounds scary, but it'll make sense in just a minute. Every time you get to choose a talent, there are 3 choices, and you get to pick one of those. Once you pick one, you can't go back and get the other 2. So you're really going to have to make a hard choice of, do I want shiny object A, B, or C? Our goal is there are no mandatory talents. If you're a healer, you should not see, oh, I have to take this talent because I'm a healer. There may be 3 healing talents, and you pick which one you think would be the most fun, or which one fits your play style, or maybe which one matches this certain fight you're about to do. But we shouldn't ever see anyone saying, oh, you have to get this, or you're just doing it wrong. We also think an important concept here is that you can change talents fairly easily, about as easily as you can change glyphs. So not the kind of thing you can do in combat, but say you pick the fear talent, and you go into a fight where everything's immune to fear, you can say, hang on a sec, I'm going to respec to the stun talent instead, because I know that's useful in this fight. So I'm just going to walk you through the UI here. Our UI designers have done a great job coming up with a new system. This one should look fairly familiar. We changed it from vertical to horizontal, but you still pick a spec at level 10. And then these are all the abilities you would get. In this case, you're picking the Holy Paladin. Holy Shock's still at level 10, and then a slew of other things you get at higher level. A lot of these will be familiar. A couple of these you're probably saying, ooh, that looks interesting and new. Holy Wrath, Holy Only. And then here's the Paladin talent tree. Every level, every time you get to make a talent choice, you get to pick one of these. These are all very powerful. They should feel very unique and very exciting. I really want to emphasize that. You'll see some familiar names in here, but don't assume that it works exactly the same way it does on live. Sanctified Wrath, for example, we had to make the kind of thing that a Holy Paladin or Protection Paladin would also say, you know what, that's something I could really use, that sounds fun, I want to try it. We think this system, as Tom said at the beginning, is going to give players a lot of cool stuff to geek out over, rather than just saying, hey, what's the cookie cutter spec I need before I can go raiding or PvP. You really want to look at this and analyze and say, I think Veneration sounds fun, but then I'm going to get Sanctified Wrath instead of Divine Purpose, that sort of thing. It's pretty exciting. I think once you see all of the individual talents here, you'll be pretty excited about it too. So here's an example of the paladin choosing at level 15, choosing speed of light, and then the other choices. You can't ever pick two things in one row. We knew when we started out here that the only way to really get you guys to understand how this system works is to go through every freaking talent in the game. So we're going to do a panel right after this one, and we're going to walk through every class and say, here are your talents, enjoy. All right, I'm going to turn things back over to Tom again.
All right, so we've got more new features to talk about. As you guys may have seen, there was a little bullet point that went by in the preview trailer about scenarios, these PvE scenarios. And you might be asking yourself, what the hell is a PvE scenario? What do they mean? So what a PvE scenario is it's a way for us to give you interesting new things to do that don't really make a whole lot of sense in the context of a typical dungeon, right? A dungeon is all about you go out there and you fight trash, you kill a boss, you fight trash, you kill a boss. And they're usually taking place in these kind of unique areas that we create for the purposes of a dungeon. Scenarios are more about reusing parts of the world that we've either already created in interesting new ways. I'll go over one example, which is the Battle for Goldshire. And it also gives us the ability to do some interesting new types of PvE gameplay that we've never seen before. One way to characterize that potentially would be able to kind of label them as PvE battlegrounds. So what are they? These are short instances for a few players. The number of players can vary based on what the scenario is. The scenario can be for 3 players, for example. And these are all designed for players that are playing their character in a similar way as they would when they're questing. So you don't have the typical like tank, heal, DPS type setups for these types of scenarios that you would for a dungeon. It's a staged experience, or at least in many cases it is, where you'll have different phases of the scenario that you go through and you're trying to accomplish some greater goal. And here's one example, right? So these are purely theoretical examples. This isn't an actual scenario that we're in the process of creating. But if you can imagine for a moment a scenario called the Defense of Goldshire, and let's pretend for a little bit that you and a couple buddies are in there, and your job is at first to clear out a bunch of kobolds. You got to find and return some children in the town, and then kill Goldtooth. And this would be the type of scenario that we would do as an introductory scenario. Maybe we first introduce this scenario at level 10 for players that are leveling up for the first time. But we would even design it in such a way where you could do like a level 90 version of it, so that even if you never got a chance to do it, or you just kind of wanted to go back and do it again, you'd be able to do that. And of course, with our philosophy of being able to do whatever it is you want to do to progress your character, you'd still be able to get Valor points out of doing it at level 90. So, here we are imagining, these are all fake screenshots, by the way, so. Whoa, big gold tooth. Another example that I kind of called out is the idea of being able to do PvE battlegrounds. This is the kind of thing that we've never really done before, we've never really been able to do before, and we'd like to take a stab at doing some stuff like this. So if you imagine this, imagine that this is the Battle of Grizzly Gulch, the Battle of GG. And let's, again, purely hypothetical example, let's imagine that this is a Defense of the Ancient style battleground, right? Except there are no enemy players on the other side. Because there are a lot of players out there that would love to do battleground type content, but are kind of, freak out by fighting other players, or, makes them really nervous, or they just don't like that kind of thing. So this gives us the ability to do a lot of those similar kinds of mechanics in a PvE setting. And that also allows us to do some slightly different things that we wouldn't normally be able to do. So imagine that you and a couple buddies are in charge of going down the lanes of this PvE battleground called the Battle of Grizzly Gulch. You've got to slay enough soldiers to get your characters powered up, and then dominate the enemy defenses to destroy their 6 towers in the barracks, and then out comes the boss, and you'll have to apply the beat down to General Drake. Here's actually a map that we've been working on a little bit. This one is like an extension of a Defense of the Ancient style battleground that we're currently working on, so you can kind of imagine the scenario taking place in an environment like this. So these scenarios have a wide variety of different applications that really give us the ability to do new things that we haven't done before with dungeons, because those are very much about tank, heal, DPS, fight some mobs, tank them, heal them, beat them down, boss, etc. Another important point here is that there isn't player collision, that these are designed to be PvE. And one other way to look at these is that they could potentially replace group quests. I know that a lot of you probably experienced way back in the day when we used to do a lot more group quests out in the outdoor world, but we always had problems with, some people would be halfway into doing the group quest when you join up with the quest, and you kind of have to start over again, and all the kind of awkwardness of, LFGing inside, trade chat or whatever, or in an LFG chat for that zone of trying to find a group to do your group quest, because this gives us a more elegant way to use some of those interesting outdoor areas to do group-style questing. So that brings us to how it kind of works, and kind of a little look into that. Now, not surprisingly, this is the type of queue-and-go sort of scenario, like a dungeon finder. So you pop open a UI and you queue for it. And on the upside, no role requirements. It kind of implies automatically very short queues. So you might even be able to imagine being able to do something like this while you're waiting for your dungeon queue to pop, because they're intended to be pretty quick experiences. And of course, this is one of many different options to earn Valor points to progress your character. So now let's talk about another one of those new features that went by, and that's challenge mode dungeons. Hopefully this will be something that excites a lot of you in the room. I don't know how many of you guys were around way back in the day when we had this thing called the 45-minute Baron Run. So that was pretty exciting, and I've always really wanted for us to be able to do that sort of thing again and really institutionalize it in a way that adds a whole new type of gameplay. Granted, there were some not fun elements to it. For example, like if it was blocking your progression to getting your tier 1.5 set back in the day, that part of it was a little bit of a downer. But that won't happen here. So what are challenge mode dungeons? Dungeons, as you know, are these experiences that you guys go through already. But wouldn't it be interesting if we had essentially time trial versions of these dungeons? And so challenge modes really are that. When you set yourself into a challenge mode and you group up with your buddies or potentially queue into a challenge mode dungeon, the purpose of doing this is going to be to complete the dungeon in a specified amount of time. And so that implies a whole different level of coordination and teamwork that you don't necessarily get when you're just sort of plodding through, either because you're new to the dungeon or you're just trying to get the loot out of it and you're just kind of taking your time to do whatever. And you'll rip through there as fast as you can in order to earn bronze, silver, or gold medals for doing it as quickly as you possibly can. The gear levels for these are normalized, which is another important distinction here. So what that means is that, for example, if you were to apply that to today's world, you would all be brought down to the same level of gear. All your gear would scale down to the same level of gear, some standard level, that you would go through this. So it isn't the kind of thing that you can just get better gear to overpower your way through. So when you're able to, talk about, So you'll be able to brag to your buddies about how you got that, 23-minute run, and you'll know that it's a fair basis of comparison because everybody's gear was at the same level. And what do you get out of it, other than Valor points, of course? You also get sweet-looking gear with no stats. What might that be for? Transmogrify, perhaps. So we're going to create an entire tier of gear that has a unique and special look that you'll be able to get exclusively by doing challenge modes. So if you do the challenge modes and you rip through there and you get the gold medal in all the different dungeons, you'll be able to earn yourself an entire set of gear to show off to your friends about what a badass you are for being able to clear these dungeons as quickly as you can.